we have to work on not being so distracted by the people in our lives who are not really going anywhere anyway, but they're more afraid or more focused on stopping us from getting to where we desire to be. When those are the people closest to you, they're in your family, or you don't have your community established yet, it can feel overwhelming and almost delusional when you're trying to attach yourself to the reality that you desire to be in. Mastering your reality is more than just deciding who you want to be. It's also showing up as that person, connecting, allowing yourself to emotionally disconnect from the past. So past versions of yourself, past versions that other people had access to and no longer have access to. We want to think of it like this. The people from our past know a version of us that applied to that space. And she does not exist anymore. They don't know that because they want to re-engage with you from those old narratives, and she does not exist, okay? So when those people come around and they want to trigger you or remind you of the old you in order to bring you back into that same narrative, we have to remember that they're trying to bring us back into the narrative where they feel like they benefited from that version of us. So whether it was you lacked boundaries in that space, or you felt more unsure, insecure about showing up as your authentic self, and therefore they took advantage of that. And again, this is not from the perspective of wanting to be a victim or making ourselves believe that we are victims or other people are always out to get us. It's to acknowledge the role that we played in those narratives and that we are no longer playing them anymore. So as we shift and we're this new version of ourselves, and the people who benefited the most from us not knowing ourselves or benefited the most from us not being in alignment, those people are going to have more of a whiplash effect than you will. In my own experience, what I noticed was the people who talked the loudest, judged me the most for wanting to change, how I changed, those were the same people who, when I stepped fully into this new version of myself, they were the ones copying me the most. So I always say that the people who are judging you and they're the loudest in the background, those are the people in the bush taking notes. So as much as you feel uncomfortable, right, because maybe you're the first person in your family to do it, or people from your past, whether that's friends, lovers, coworkers, whoever it was that you spent most of your time with as your out of aligned self, those are going to be the people that they're going to have the most shock, right? Because think about it. I've had friends, and I know that you've had too, where they really did like the old version of me that was more insecure or really poured into people. I am still the same person, right? Okay, we're not throwing away our whole personality and becoming somebody else. We're amplifying the positives about ourselves and being conscious and aware of the parts of us that maybe we need to work on, or maybe they are coming from more of a trauma space, or they're coming from more of a fight or flight space. That's another thing. One of the most important things to realize is that stress is going to really negatively impact your life, okay? When you're in fight or flight mode, we talk about this as like, you know, we needed it during the times when we were literally running from animals that could kill us. But what we have to recognize is that it's not so much of, oh, you don't need that right now because there isn't a lion right down the street from you. Your thoughts can literally activate your nervous system, your fight or flight system, that causes you to feel just as stressed as if you were in one of the most catastrophic events of your life. So when we think about changing and how that causes stress, I mean, small things, just the fact that you want to dress differently than you used to, talk differently than you used to, really show up as a version of yourself that allows you to feel more comfortable with who you are. Acknowledge for yourself that that is going to emotionally cause you to feel stress. It's going to cause you to feel uncomfortable. And we don't want to dismiss that, because when we do, we think to ourselves, it's not that big of a deal, or I'm making a bigger deal of it than I need to. I'm stressing for no reason. It's not that serious. We can shame ourselves into not acknowledging that, yes, it really is that stressful. It really is that big of a deal, because if you were just staying in your house and nobody was here and they saw, you know, you're dressing up in your closet and you're talking the way that you want to and you don't step outside, then sure, you're not going to be that stressed. But the moment you step outside and you go to your new job and you're dressed as the person that you want to be, but you on the street run into someone from your high school or that's someone that you used to date, and they're like, who the heck are you? We live in a society that really wants to put people back into their box. And again, I always say this, but I want to emphasize this is not gender specific, because sometimes we think to ourselves that it's men who are trying to push us down, or, you know, women have it worse. But in reality, you could be a woman who has other women who do this to you. You could be a man who has men do this to you, or women who do this to you. I never want to put it into too much of a box, because if I make it so that you think men do this, then you're going to miss the big, glaringly obvious, jealous sister that you have, or mother that you have, or friend that you have. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I can make a video on this later. But the idea that when you have people around you that envy what you have, they look at what you have and they kind of wish that they had it too. That's one thing, right? That's maybe they're inspired to kind of do the same thing. Maybe you started working out, losing weight. Maybe you did go back to school, or you've had a child, or you've gotten into a relationship, and they just think, man, that kind of looks nice. I kind of want that too. That's one thing. Okay. The other part is when it slips into jealousy, and we have people who are operating from a lower frequency, people who literally feel like if they don't take it from you, they're never going to have it in their life. And that is a more dangerous place to be in. So we want to be clear on the fact that any and everybody that we come across can operate in this space. It does not just show up in certain races or certain genders or people who look a certain way or have a certain socioeconomic status. It can literally be anybody. When we start to shift, or in your life as you're moving forward, and you're really showing up fully in alignment mentally, spiritually, and physically, and you come across people who trigger you or want to bring you back into old narratives, old spaces, old cycles that you have fully distanced yourself from, what do we do? How does that look? You know, how do we view it so that we're not constantly in this endless cycle, distracting ourselves from our path? There are some people who are genuinely operating from a scarcity mindset. These are people who are in survival mode, right? And that's kind of a buzzword, but it really does apply. There are people who are more focused on paying their bills, or finding a partner, having a child. What kind of job are they going to have? What are people going to think of them? How do they do this? How do they do that? And when you show up, think about what it takes for you to be in a space where you can even focus on your spiritual journey, or more so aligning with who you genuinely want to be. You have to have peace in your life. You have to have calm. Your basic needs met in order for you to even move on to the next step. So people who are trying to pull us backwards, people that are more focused on stopping your energy, stopping your bag, stopping your goals, your life, are people who are not operating from a peaceful, more aligned, higher vibrational space. These are people who would literally shoot their damn mother in the foot if it meant that they could get ahead, okay? These are not people who are thinking more clearly and more aligned. Second thing is that you should not feel guilty for the fact that you're even prioritizing this space of your life during this time of your life. When you're doing life right, every game has to be played by its rules. Life is a game and it has rules. And when you are moving in the direction that you want to, right? Your lane, your life, your spiritual space is perfectly aligned with what you want to do. You come to a space in your life where you're ready to focus on really internally glowing up, really moving more authentically in alignment with who you desire to be. That's a natural part of life. These people typically want to make you feel guilty for the fact that you're even prioritizing stuff like that. Like, think about the fact that we have to even explain that you are the reason, you are the occasion for wanting to get dressed up and do something nice for yourself. I drop my kids off in whatever I want to wear, whether that's a dress that day, or I'm going to the gym, so I'm wearing my workout clothes, or I'm going to Target and I'm wearing an outfit that looks like I should be going to like a corporate lunch. It doesn't matter. The fact is that you desire to look the way that you want to, and you desire to show up in your life more in alignment with the authentic version of yourself that's more peaceful, more whole, more calm, more spiritually grounded than past versions of yourself. I don't have to explain that to anybody. I don't have to get kudo points from anybody or make sure that somebody else feels comfortable with the way that I want to show up for myself. I know what past versions of myself have experienced in order to feel in alignment in this space in her life right now. And I owe it to her to show up as the way that I desire to. And you owe it to yourself as well. When you allow people who are not fully in alignment to make you feel uncomfortable, we are prioritizing their version of us versus our version of ourselves. Another thing is that when, like I said before, the people who talk the most about the way that I was doing things and why I was doing things and like spreading rumors about me the most, these are the people who are trying to copy me now more than anybody else. I joke, but I'm dead serious that these are the people who are in the bush taking notes. When you're really allowing yourself to be your authentic self, and it feels like, yeah, but they're talking about me, they're judging me, it feels uncomfortable. I can tell you right now, none of those people are anywhere near me. Like, I don't have any run-ins with them. I don't have conversations with them. Nobody passes information to me. I have created a space in my life where they genuinely do not exist. So their opinions of me, the things that they used to say about me, how they used to make me feel, none of that has transferred into my current state of existing. When you have that fear of what are they going to say and how are they going to say this and why do they think and da 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 da, whoever these people are, they're not even going to be in your life in the long run. And sometimes we think to ourselves, well, how does that happen? It happens from having strong boundaries, right? You don't have to remind these people of your boundaries every single time you see them. They can see it and feel it because it's an energy first before it shows up in the physical realm. So when you carry yourself differently, people can feel that. When you walk into a room and you're not as uncomfortable as you used to be or as unsure about yourself, or you're, especially as people who are really nice, if you align with people pleaser energy, when you're showing up for yourself and you're feeling good about yourself, but then say someone you know doesn't feel good about themselves, you can spend a lot of time trying to make those people feel better. And that takes us out of our aligned space. And as someone who has had friendships with women who did this, where they would feel really uncomfortable and insecure, and then they would spend most of our interaction like putting themselves down, self-loathing in order for me to pour into them. That's energetically draining. And when you decide that you're not going to do that anymore, these people can feel it. So they remove themselves from your life and they try and find ways in order to connect with you again. But when it's clear that you're not reacting in the way that you used to, and I put this in my last video where I was talking about, the characters that I identified as Stephen and Melissa, those people believed that the old version of me, that she still existed, they just had to pull me out. And so they would purposely do things to agitate me, to activate me, to trigger me, to make me upset in order to bring me back into that space for themselves, to make themselves feel better. Because what you have to think about more than anything is that these people played a role in that version of your life. Whether they were the friend that you prioritized more, or they were the ex that you couldn't get over, or they're the new girlfriend who thinks they're better than you, or the sister who competes with you, or the mother who can't let you have your own life. It doesn't matter. The point is that you played a role in that narrative. And what they're trying to do is bring you back into that space. So they're going to say things that the old version of you used to get upset by. They're going to do things to piss you off, to make you feel uncomfortable, insecure. And when we say to ourselves that that version of us doesn't exist, we're literally saying we're not going to respond the same way that we used to. And you would think, sometimes we struggle. We're like, why does that bother them so much? Because they attach themselves and their self-worth to that version of you. That version of you made them feel better about themselves because you responded to them. You made them feel like they were of value because you acknowledged them. And this is when we have to get, again, back into the mindset of people like this. If they're in fight or flight survival mode, they are not in a space of feeling better about themselves and peace and love and light, right? These are people who negative energy is still attention. Negative attention is still attention. So when you're fighting with someone like this, they love it even more. I have encountered people who literally felt like if you're crying over them, it means that you love them. Like, take time to really sink into that distorted view of love, of connection, of life, of confidence, of how to be a human in this world. When someone thinks like that, they're not in the same state that you're in. They're not in the same state of mind, energetic state that someone who is now spiritually, activating themselves into being this new version of themselves. They're not in the same state of mind. So when you're trying to explain it to someone like this, it would be like talking to a wall or trying to explain to a newborn infant what life is and why they're here and what they can gain from life. There's just no point. So that's another thing, is that you have to recognize that you have to leave people where they are, that not everybody is meant to come with you unless you're trying to not grow to these new levels. If you're trying to stay in the same place, then sure, it doesn't matter, right? If you feel like, yeah, I kind of want to, but I still like, the way that I feel when I fight with them, then you're not ready for that next level, because that next level is going to require you to dig deep, to feel comfortable with who you are as a person, and to not engage with people who are not for your highest good. The last thing I would say is that the biggest reason why we're triggered by people is that we want to explain to them what they've done to us. We want closure, right? This is what people say. We want people to acknowledge what they've done. We want them to apologize. We want them to feel a piece of what they made us feel. The truth is that they do know, and they do feel it. They're never going to give you the satisfaction of letting you know that they do, but they do. If people who did this behavior to me as well, I always felt like they were delusional and thinking that they didn't know or care or lack the empathy to understand that what they were doing was wrong. But then I found out that these same people were going out and telling people that I was doing what they were doing to me. And this was a confirmation that they do absolutely 100% know that what they're doing is wrong. They lie about what they're doing to you. They lie to other people about how they're triggering you or they're trying to cause problems for you, because they know how it sounds to people that they're the ones creating these problems in your life. So that part of you that wants satisfaction, that wants someone to answer for what they've done to you, that's a very real part of you, but that's a part that we have to heal within ourselves. And that, whether that's going back and healing childhood wounds, or that's acknowledging for ourselves that we didn't deserve those things, whether that's going to therapy or really sitting with ourselves and doing the inner work necessary to transmute that energy, whatever you have to do in order to recognize that that comes from within, that's never going to come from these people. Because again, going back to those old narratives, you play a role in their life and they play a role in your life in those old narratives and those old timelines. So if you're trying to get someone who is part of that old narrative to acknowledge what they've done to you, and you know that version of themselves is not even capable of that, you're asking them to do something that is actually physically, spiritually, mentally impossible for them to do. That does not mean that it's not unacceptable or that it shouldn't have happened. That is to acknowledge that for ourselves, when we give ourselves the power back, we're empowering ourselves to recognize that we can actually move forward without that piece being black and white for us. Another part of understanding that energy is recognizing the social programming that we have all received that is a complete lie. It's from TV shows and commercials, and when you go out into social settings, the unspoken rules that we're all supposed to engage in. And when you see TV shows, pay attention. Like, don't just watch your favorite TV shows just because you like them. Watch them from a psychological, spiritual perspective. They are trying to send you a message on what a relationship should look like, how you should connect with people. I remember thinking about how many times I saw in a TV show where a mother was getting her kids ready for school, giving them breakfast, racing around like a damn lunatic, throws the breakfast down, and then immediately it's like, we gotta go. How many times did I see that? Probably in the shows that I watched, I think 3 out of 5 showed a mother who was racing around like this. And that was mothers who were single mothers. That was mothers who didn't have good jobs, or mothers who had really good jobs, corporate jobs, high paying jobs. They were still running around like, trying to make sure that everything was settled. So if you watched stuff like that from the time that you were a kid and they look like you, or they look like the environment that you grew up in, you're going to think, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. Even if they don't come out and say directly to you, this is who you're supposed to be, you're going to feel like that's considered normal. And one of the things that our society pushes as normal is getting closure from relationships where people harmed us. It's this idea that we should still connect with people who have harmed us, because if we can't forgive and forget, then we haven't moved on yet. And that is, again, a manipulation tactic that is used by toxic people, but is also pushed by society. And one of the people that I cut out of my life, that is something that they constantly told to me and to other people about me, that I can't forgive and forget. I can't move on. I'm not able to. When in reality, moving on from something that someone has done to you is the ability to say, you no longer have access to me, period. And even though we don't see this in TV programs or in commercials or in life in general, it doesn't mean that that's not the truth. That doesn't mean that that's not what you should be aligned with. So the part of you that desires to have closure is not wrong. It's not delusional to desire closure. That may not even be you that desires closure. That could be a part of you that was programmed to believe that that is what you should do, and that is how life should be. There are very narcissistic, toxic people. And again, I use that term so that you understand, it's like the umbrella term, so we can understand who we're talking about. But also from a spiritual perspective, these people are just not in alignment. Like they're not necessarily trying to go out of their way to harm you. They really cannot see any other way. And I'm not saying this from a perspective of abuse is okay or anything like that. I'm trying to explain to you that there are people who truly and genuinely cannot give you what you're asking for, because they can't see it. The reality that you're living in, and I'm not saying it's delusional, I'm saying that they cannot see it. It's no different than trying to talk to a child about what college is like when they're in kindergarten. That's too overwhelming, and they're going to shut you down and not listen to you. That's what these people are like. I'm not saying they're children, and so we should mollycoddle them or handle them with care. I'm saying that if we recognize it from ourselves, for ourselves, that these people are not capable of connecting with us and communicating with us on that level, we'll stop wanting them to. We'll stop trying to ask them to do something that literally contradicts what they're capable of doing. And we'll empower ourselves to move forward without their permission or their acceptance.